Hello, it's 1 o'clock. I'm Joel. Just wanted to say a quick hello and just check everyone can hear me and see me. In the chat box on the left-hand side of the screen, if you can, then if you could type a little message in there just to let us know that it's all being received clearly, then that would be great. And if anyone's having any problems in particular, that would be great. Lovely, that's all good. A bit choppy. Great. If it is a little bit choppy, it could be just connections, internet connections and things. We are recording this, so if we make it available after for people, then if you do miss any kind of key bits, then you can always listen back to it again on the ISM website. Hopefully it'll be clear because it's being recorded at source here. Okay, so 28 attendees, so I think we're good to go. Okay, so welcome and thank you for joining me this afternoon in this portfolio career webinar. This is the second one of these I've done for the ISM, and I'm delighted to be doing it again. So a little bit about my background for those who don't know me or what I do. I'm a professional saxophonist by trade, with whom I play saxophone and direct the Lunar Saxophone Quartet, which is my primary ensemble I play with. I also play with the London Contemporary Orchestra, where I'm principal saxophonist there as well. I'm the director of Bright Ivy Artist Management, which is my artist management company. We look after classical and contemporary musicians. And it actually says on there, and music in offices, but I actually resigned my directorship there at the start of this year. Previously, I owned a publishing company called Staunch Music, and I was the professional development consultant to the ISM, and delighted to be working with them again on their new pilot scheme for business consultancy. So if you haven't looked into that yet, we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But if you're a full member, or full graduate member or full student member, then you'll be entitled to an hour's worth of business consultancy advice with me via Skype or the telephone. So if you have any things that you wanted to air privately and have a chat about anything business related, or just generally, then we've got an hour of time together. I act as a consultant to lots of freelance musicians, as well as my work through the ISM, ensembles as well, record labels. I used to be the classical music manager at Edition Records, and I also consult for other art organisations and charities. I studied at the Guildhall and the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, and before that I was head of music at a primary school in London. So a very varied background covering lots of different elements of music, and hopefully that will be useful to all you guys who I know will be coming from very different backgrounds and have very different questions as well. Okay, so just a little summary of what we're going to cover in today's webinar. Apologies if you've heard me talk about all this before, and hopefully I'll say something different this time. But if not, then feel free to ask questions at the end. We're going to have about 15 or 20 minutes worth of time at the end to answer individual questions, which hopefully will benefit everyone. So is a portfolio career right for you? It's not right for everyone, so we look at the reasons. If you haven't already started your portfolio career, whether it's a good idea for you personality-wise, and whether you're going to be able to make a really good fist of it, or whether you might find it too difficult. We'll talk about the benefits of actually having a portfolio career, coupled with the negatives of having one. We'll talk about ways and steps to build an effective portfolio itself. So gathering little bits of work from various sources, essentially building a portfolio. We're going to look at the importance of contacts and how to keep them. And we're going to look at thinking about your competitors, so who else is occupying the same market space as you, and how to differentiate yourself from the market, or how you fit within that market. So, is a portfolio career right for you, and what is a portfolio career? So Charles Handy, who has written many books about portfolio careers, not in music, but really useful sources, just generally around portfolio careers. And this phrase was started to be bandied around in the 1980s, believe it or not, but it's been fairly recently adopted by musicians as work is becoming less and less easy to get, as more and more brilliant musicians and music people are coming out of colleges and universities and deciding they want to take up a career in music. So we have to do more things now in order to earn the same amount of money as you would have done just doing one of those things previously. So Charles Handy defines portfolio careers as having a portfolio of activities, and he breaks it down as some that you do for money, some for interest, some for pleasure, some for a cause. The different bits fit together to form a balanced whole greater than the parts. And for me, that's the important part of having a portfolio career. It's the different things that you get to do rather than the same things you might associate with a 9-to-5 job. All of those different parts and those elements that make, well, I feel my work much more enjoyable to do. So obviously you have to be a certain type of person to be able to have a portfolio musician. And these are some of the things I think are important to possess personality-wise. So you need to be disciplined and organized. You need to be a good time manager, passionate about the areas of work you undertake. You need to have the ability to compartmentalize and prioritize. An important one, the ability to say no, and the ability to assess opportunities effectively. So if we have a little look through each of those, being disciplined and organized, as musicians, we are trained to be disciplined. Our training itself, whether we're an instrumentalist or a singer or a chamber musician, everything we do is disciplined and organized by nature, whether it's in practice or performance. So that one, I think most of you will possess already. Maybe slightly less on the organized one. I know that some creative people find it, they have all of the ideas, but they just don't quite have the strategy to roll them out. So the organization side of things, if you're not naturally organized, then you need to get that in order. Being a good time manager is really important, because having a portfolio career, you're going to have lots of bits of work from various sources. So allocating them the correct amount of time and being realistic with the amount of time each is going to take is very important indeed. If there's a large piece of work that you know you're going to have to dedicate a large amount of time to, then you have to be disciplined enough to know not to take on any other work during that session. Otherwise, it's going to affect the work that you do. You have to be passionate about the areas that you undertake. I know, having a portfolio career, there is this tendency to accept little bits of work in areas that you might not feel completely compelled to work towards just because it is money, it's income. But you have to be passionate about it, because if you're not, then it really does affect the quality of the work that you do. The ability to compartmentalize and prioritize, these are linked with the ability to say no and being passionate. You have to prioritize work that is either well paid enough to turn down other work, the ability to say no, or because you want to do it for a greater cause, or there has to be some motive behind it. Simply accepting everything just doesn't work in a portfolio career. You'll find yourself really swamped with things if things are going well, and then what happens is the quality of work is affected, and then the people who have booked you for that work won't be happy with the results, and therefore it snowballs into this thing where your personality and your name and your brand gets affected, and it's likely that the people who have booked you might not book you again in the future. So you have to prioritize what work you do and make sure you're doing it because you really want to. And you have to have the ability to assess opportunities effectively. And that doesn't just mean the actual monetary value of doing that particular piece of work. Obviously, that's important because we all have bills to pay and we all know how much we need to make each month in order to get through life. But there are other reasons for doing work. As Charles Handy said in the previous slide, some of it is for a greater cause. Some of it might be because of personal gain, or it might be education for yourself, or it might just be because you want to do a good deed. And there are other reasons to take work, but you have to assess the opportunities and see if there's any linking, for example, into future work, and whether it's actually going to be a good idea to take on that particular piece of work. So if you think that you have all of those personality traits for being a successful portfolio musician, then let's have a look at some of the benefits of actually having one. It sounds quite daunting when you list them all like that. I'm slightly worried myself now whether I've made the right decision. But the benefits of having a portfolio career, I still think, outweigh the uncertainty that comes with it too. So I feel the benefits of having a portfolio career are as follows. Multiple sources of income, spread worries of relying on a single source in an uncertain art world. Well, waking up this morning, that art world has become even more uncertain. I was just discussing with my colleagues at the ISM how the funding recently within the arts through organisations such as PRSF and Arts Council has become incredibly hard to achieve. In PRSF's last round of funding, they funded 7% of all applications as opposed to 51%, which historically is what they funded. So that you're getting more and more people applying for the money that's available. So it is really uncertain at the moment, even more so this morning. So having multiple sources of income hopefully will spread that worry ever so slightly. We don't work in the same way as people who work at large corporate firms. So we need to kind of strategize and look at our sources of income, and obviously spreading them is a wise decision. It allows you to monetize all of your skills having a portfolio career, and that doesn't necessarily have to be isolated to music. So, for example, I do a little bit of photography work for certain record labels and certain magazines, which I get paid for. It's not a lot of money, but it's fun and I enjoy it, and it is a skill. I also do some web development, some coding for a couple of people, just again, really small amounts of work just for people I've worked with in the past, but it all adds up. So your skills might lie in other areas outside of music, so you might look to monetize those as well. And obviously not being tied into a firm where you're not allowed to moonlight as such, then it really does allow you to monetize all of them. It allows for a more varied way of life, which for me is one of the benefits of having one, and the thing I like the most. It means that when I'm doing consultancy, for example, which forms a large part of my career at the moment, I can be in the garden, or I could be in Spain, or I could be in London, or I could be in my office. It allows me to live a really varied way of life, that particular thing, because with technology as it is, Skype, really good connections on phones, webinars, you can do that, and you can have a more varied way of dealing with things rather than the old-fashioned come into the office for a conversation. Being a musician and kind of especially music training, you kind of train to do a lot of things in a short space of time, and sometimes you're running around everywhere trying to meet deadlines. So again, I don't think you truly appreciate that element of freedom until you've actually worked in an environment where you are much more tied in. So it's often good to revisit that point about a varied way of life, because having a portfolio career allows you to be in control of it. You will obviously meet more people, and the people you will meet are not necessarily ones who work within the same sector as you, which I think is more interesting. So having all of these different strands and being in different places will open more connections to you than going in and out of the same office every day. Freedom in when you work, and freedom to think independently. So again, depending on what you do, obviously if you're doing a lot of teaching where you have to go into schools, then you have slightly less freedom. But certain elements of working within the music industry, you can work very, very remotely now. So you have that freedom there. And the ability to think independently, so you're not being confined by a hierarchy who are paying your salary as such. You know, you have the ability to pick and choose. You have the ability to make those decisions yourself, whether right or wrong, because you are the boss. So they are what I believe are the fun bits and the benefits of being a portfolio musician. But there are also negatives, as with anything. People find it very hard to have a lack of structure, depending on your personality, whether you are self-motivated and whether you can see the bigger goal, the bigger picture, and where you want to end up. Having that lack of structure where no one is saying, do this, do that, you have to be here at this time, this is when I need this by, it can really affect certain people, and it is not for everyone. So if you do struggle to do those things, then a portfolio career will be a steep learning curve for you if you decide to pursue that. The type of people who wait until the last minute to do things and cram, if you are one of those people, then flags should be raised now, because it's the type of thing that doesn't suit well a portfolio career. You don't always have colleagues to speak to when you need them, because you're not in that environment where everyone is available to you in an office, for example. So the immediacy of decisions can sometimes take a little bit of time, especially working in arts management. I find that quite often I'm able to reply to things very quickly, especially on the move. But when I need information from the musicians and artists that I work with, it's quite difficult for festivals to appreciate that sometimes it's not quite as easy to get that information off them quickly. So if they're locked up in Maida Vale doing a recording, or if they're in France doing a tour, it's not always easy to get that information from them, which can be frustrating. But as a musician, you can help that by being available to everyone more quickly. So you can speak to them, but it's not always as immediate. You have a potentially lower income than if working for a firm. Obviously, you don't get the benefits associated with working for large global firms such as private healthcare or dental cover or life insurance and things like that. They all have to be agreed independently if you wanted to have those. And you don't also have the kind of HR support of working for a large firm. The decisions you make really are on your head. Potentially lower income is also a potentially higher income, by the way, because the possibilities are endless, I suppose. You can just keep taking work, you can earn more money, you can increase your fees. The top end is more and the lower end could be less. There are very unclear work boundaries having a portfolio career. A very good repairer of instruments that I know has to stop working at 5:30 p.m. Otherwise, he said he would never stop working. So he starts at 7 in the morning and works until about 5:30, he said. Otherwise, he would be working 24 hours a day. There's enough supply for that to happen. My wife is not a musician, so I had to explain that quite clearly when we first got together, that sometimes I get home from a day of recording or rehearsing or doing whatever I'm doing, and then I might need to work on my laptop for 3 or 4 hours, hours to cover certain areas that have passed me by whilst I've not been on technology during the day. So it's really important to kind of balance that family home life thing, and set some boundaries early doors. And if you're not the type of person that is good at setting those boundaries, then again, portfolio careers might be difficult. Unexpected workload from clients. That is a negative, but I think that, you know, if demand is outstripping the ability to deliver it, then you're doing really well. And I'd rather be turning down work than kind of really trying hard to search for it. So unexpected workloads are really good if it's come in and you're doing well already. But by that, I actually mean if a client changes the brief of something. So say, for example, you're going to do a recording somewhere, you're working as an engineer, and the brief changes from we need 2 sessions to we need 30 sessions, then obviously you haven't factored that in. So the ability to be flexible within that can sometimes be a real pain. So you have to deal with unexpected workloads occasionally. And again, some people don't like the uncertainty of their income. They don't like kind of having to predict an unpredictable number. So working for a firm where it's clearly laid out and contracted and you know exactly what you're going to get at the end of the year, then that suits some people more than others. So no one's logged out, so hopefully the negatives haven't put you off too much, which is good. So if you've decided you're with me and you're going to have this portfolio career, then let's start looking at how to build an effective one. So the thing that this is all said with hindsight, by the way, having gone through it and done it myself, and if I'd had the information at the start, that would have made things a lot easier. But what I try to do now is to split my career into 4 categories that will allow me to make those things that we talked about in the first slide about kind of which work you take on and which you don't, when to say no, all of those things. So I split it into paid work. That's work that comes in or I've gone looking for in order to pay my mortgage and everything else to live. There's study work, which is things that I want to do that is going to develop my knowledge and my thirst for knowledge. Gift work is work which I'm happy to do pro bono, or whether there's friends or colleagues that might want an exchange of service for something. So it's work that technically I'm not going to actually receive any physical income for. And then there's homework, which is things like washing the dishes and hoovering the house and going to the post office and doing all of those things that are really important, but you also have to factor the time in to do them. Because if you're working portfolio career-wise, then it adds into your time. So paid work is obviously the most important strand of all of those 4 things, unless you are what you call financially free. So you're secure in your knowledge and you can just do everything for fun, which would be lovely. But for 99% of us, we need to focus on paid work, and that's the most important of those 4 quarters. So decide whether the work that you undertake has integrity and you believe in it. Because working as your own boss and being your own brand essentially means that everything you lend your name to, you will be judged on. So if it doesn't have integrity and you're not happy with how you're going to be perceived as a result of doing these pieces of work, then you really do need to consider whether you should do it or not. Does it pay enough for the time commitment? This is the one most musicians really, really struggle with, and people who book musicians for things really, really struggle with as well. So what we get is this kind of horrible situation where clients think that something's too expensive and we think it's not enough, and you get caught in all of these kind of financial wranglings and haggling, which isn't great. So you have to make sure that you're being paid enough for the time commitment for that piece of work. And you have to factor in the things that sometimes promoters and bookers and clients don't always see. And you have to be very clear with them that this is why the price is as it is. So, for example, doing a recording and getting paid £400 for it sounds like it might be a nice piece of work. It's only one session, perhaps, so 1 3-hour session, and it's £400. But where is it? Is it in Truro? Is it going to take 7 or 8 hours to get there, 7 or 8 hours back? The inability to work during the time that you're actually going to the engagement. How much time is it going to take you to learn the music? If it's going to take 2 or 3 days, then you can't be working throughout that time. So when you break it down, £400, what might, for example, for the record label who's booking you to do the work, well, that's a reasonable fee. But if it doesn't pay for the time commitment, not your time doing the actual work, but all of the time it takes to incorporate every other element, you need to factor that in. Does the work compromise the quality of other work you've committed to? By that, I mean, don't take on too much. So if you're having to cram, like we said earlier, in order to finish something before you take on the next piece of work, then you have to really make that decision quite early before you accept it. It's the classic situation of builders starting one job before they finish another. And we don't like to be guilty of that within our lovely industry. Will the work lead to future opportunities? Sometimes fees are often touted around by people as it's not very well paid, but it might lead to something else. And there's a whole thing around that, around the Olympics, about all of these brilliant opportunities to play in front of millions of people and there not being any money. Now, I'm not adverse to doing things for free, but it has to be my decision. I'm not going to be bullied into doing anything for free because it's a good idea. I have to analyze each opportunity on its merits. And it's up to me whether I take that on. And I think everyone needs to do the same. There are some occasions where it might lead to future opportunities, but if you're doing 9 out of 10 pieces of engagement based on that, it's not a wise business decision. If you think that you're financially secure for the next 3 or 4 months, and you might do something that you wouldn't necessarily normally do because you think it might lead to something, then that is a good business decision. So you really have to evaluate everything on its merits. Are there clear parameters in the work that's been you've been asked to do, and is it likely to overrun? If something is likely to overrun, and I don't mean by a couple of minutes, I mean if you've been asked to do a new website build, for example, or if you've been asked to do a recording and it's taking far longer than it normally would and it's run over by a week, then obviously that has a knock-on effect to other work that you have in the diary. So it would be good to get that really clearly established by between you and the client before the work actually starts. So when you're engaging new work, obviously this is the most important element, is going out and searching for this new work. It's great when the phone rings or you get an email and someone offers you a piece of paid work. That's the dream. But we have to be very good self-promoters, I feel, in order to make sure that we are first and foremost in people's minds when they're looking to engage with someone to do that particular piece of work. And we have lots of tools at our disposal in order to do that. Social media, so Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn, having lots of conversations with people at the moment about LinkedIn and whether it's suitable for musicians or not. I'm still undecided. LinkedIn have changed their algorithms recently, which means, well, not that recently, a couple of years ago, which means that it's not the recruitment fest that it used to be. It used to be brilliant for kind of looking for very specific skills from specific people and saving recruiters lots of money. But people don't really use it for recruitment for music. It's more of a calling card to check that you're legitimate, and hopefully you wouldn't put all of your details on there if they weren't true. So it's just like having an online CV, I feel. And if you are looking for work with more corporate environments, then it's really good to have, because they do use it every day. And having a really strong web presence as well. The very first few seconds which someone looks at your website, they will form an immediate opinion of you. So it's not good enough to say it's in construction, or it's not really as I want it to be, it's not how I feel I need to be represented. That's entirely under your control. There are some brilliant ways of getting websites done that look professional. So even if you haven't got a huge budget to spend on something that's really super creative and cutting edge, you can get something professional, and more importantly, that you feel represents you properly. People have very little time when they're looking at websites, and they do form an immediate impression of you. So make sure the web presence is as you want and has the information on there that you want to convey. So you can advertise via PR. If you have a very specific thing that you want to generate a bit of a buzz around. Obviously, PR is only as good as the story that you're trying to sell. Woman does concert on violin is not going to get any coverage whatsoever. Whereas if there's a story about the actual woman herself, maybe she's doing her 50th anniversary concert that she's been doing Beethoven sonatas. She's playing it on a Stradivarius. She's doing it in a really obscure venue, or it's something unusual. Then it starts to build more of a story. So the stories are really important for PR. People don't necessarily understand that. They think that if you pay large amounts for PR, you will get reviews, and that's not true at all. And as with anything, there are good PR companies and less good PR companies. So doing the research to make sure that you're really happy with the results they've got for similar types of work in the past is a good idea. Reviews or paid listings. I've been having this conversation a lot doing the ISM consultancy work recently about paying for advertising in music magazines. Now, and pay, for example, for teaching, advertising yourself as a teacher. Personally, I'm not sure it's effective because of the readership of those particular magazines. They're being read predominantly by musicians. So it's really good for musicians to kind of see what's going on and what concerts and what other musicians are doing. It gives you a really good overall idea of the marketplace. However, it's not being read by the type of people you want to sell your services to. So personally, I don't feel advertising in BBC Music Magazine, Classical Music Magazine as a teacher is worthwhile. So you might look to other paid listings in more prominent, more wide-ranging places, such as the Financial Times, for example, where you get a much higher readership of people who might necessarily be looking for that type of thing. Utilising existing contacts is the best way of engaging with new work, and we're not always good at doing it, actually asking for help. So letting people know that you're available for work. If you don't tell them, they don't know. So asking whether there's anything that your skills might be of use for, and just gently letting people know that you're available if they have the need for you and your skills. Obviously, aggressive marketing within your own contact is really, really uncool. So you have to be clever and not to do that. Be proactive by attending concerts, seminars, conferences, and having a physical presence as well at those things, as well as online. There are some brilliant networkers out there, the type of people, you probably all know them, they go to everything you go to, they're at. And they're working that scene, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, and having that physical presence where people are able to engage with you directly, ask you things directly, start to build a personal relationship rather than the digital one is really important. So I really would encourage going to as much as you can, especially in the way of concerts, if you're looking to do more of that performing type of work, meeting conductors, meeting other musicians, meeting composers, trying to link build with all of those things. Again, not too aggressively. If the first thing that you talk about is yourself and selling yourself, then it creates the wrong impression. First of all, build the relationship first before you bring up those things. And obviously you can promote through the ISM. You can promote your own events and performances, and as a teacher as well on the teachers listings on the ISM website. A lot of people I've been speaking to recently have said they've been receiving good numbers of pupils through the ISM teachers directory. So if you're looking for more pupils, then obviously get your listing on there. Once you have the work, which is great, you've done really well so far, so now you need to maintain it. You need to make sure that clients that you're working with come back and ask you to do more work in the future and you don't lose anything. So don't commit to any work you can't carry out to the best of your ability or doesn't interest you. You won't do a good job. And the client who's asked you to do the work will have a bad picture of you and won't ever book you again, and they might talk to someone else and tell them the same thing. So don't commit to anything that you don't feel you're going to be able to do to your best. It's just not worth it, in my opinion. Do keep in touch with previous clients so you're always in their thoughts. So having a newsletter, regular things on social media. I'm guilty of not having enough stuff on social media. But there are ways of doing it now where you can ask other people to do it for you, which I'm thinking about doing. So just having that constant presence, so you're always in people's minds, and they're not thinking, oh, I haven't seen what he's been doing for a year, is he even still alive? So you're always in their thoughts. And picking up the phone to call people is still a really good way. Checking in with people, again, it develops a personal connection that we sometimes lose behind things like email. So keeping in touch with previous clients is always really good. Lots of people are too busy to kind of actively be contacting you. So by you doing it, it's kind of, I quite like receiving those emails, little prompts, just because I am busy, and it saves me thinking about it. And it's not annoying, or don't make it too annoying. And continue to innovate and develop areas of interest and develop a niche. So linking back to the education work in those 4 types of category we talked about earlier, actually trying to think of something that you're really, really passionate about and you feel that you can commit to and do something no one else is doing, i.e. developing a niche, because there are really amazing people doing very specific things within the industry, and they're the go-to people to do those things. So if you can find a niche in the market, then do it. Really basic things at the bottom: be on time. I've not booked people in the past because they've turned up late for things previously, no matter how good they are. Be on time. Stay impartial and professional. We are heated types of personalities being musicians, and we often have very strong opinions on things. There are forums to voice those. Facebook, where if you're running your Facebook page or Twitter page as a way of gathering new business, then it's not necessarily the best forum to do so. It's good to be a kind of thought leader on things, but you do sometimes have to stay impartial and professional, because it can lose you contacts if you don't air them in the correct way. And don't take criticism personally. So whether it's a bad review you've had of some of your work, or whether just generally people are not being very nice to you, try not to take it too personally, because normally they're commenting on your work rather than you personally. So look at how you can improve that work to make sure it doesn't get criticized again in the future, but don't try not to take it personally. So we're going to have a look at the importance of contacts. Hopefully I've kind of talked a lot about that already, but just to recap the contacts, the type of people that you know already will provide you with the most work you could possibly imagine, rather than kind of work that randomly comes in, or cold calling work. So use them. Think about what they might be able to offer you. Sit down and actually do a little bit of a mind map for each person that you think might have connections that will help you. And don't be afraid to contact them. People buy into people and not products. It's really old school way of looking at it, but you can have the best product in the world, but if you're not presentable as a person and people don't like you, or they find it hard to kind of interact with you, then you're less likely to sell anything on the product, because people buy into the people. So do your best to kind of be as engaged as possible. It's much easier for people you've already met to make a decision to hire you, rather than a cold contact or job application. So linking back to using your contacts that you've worked with and staying in touch with them, much easier to ask them or inquire with them whether there's any other work coming up, than to pick up the phone and ring a load of people you've never spoken to before. Same as job applications. So if you're applying for new positions within schools or within arts organisations, if they've had some kind of contact with you in the past, then statistically they're more likely to hire you. So building those connections before you send in an application. And it might be something that you have no intention of applying for, but that 10 years down the line, you might think, right, now is the time I want to do that. And if you've already done the hard yards, then obviously that's a benefit. You never know when someone you've met will be looking for something, so don't be afraid to tell them about what you're doing, and let them know all of those good things that you're doing, to make sure that when they do want something, you're the person they go to. And obviously one good deed deserves another. People reciprocate favors. So if it's easy for you to do, if someone asks you for something, it's easy to do and you can do it, then definitely do it. Karma and all that. So really briefly, we're going to kind of spend the next 5 minutes thinking about competitors and then summing up, and then we're going to open the forum as such for some questions. So thinking about competitors, obviously these are the people who are going to be trying to take your work away from you, doing similar things to you. So we need to consider them and not sit there in the dark and presume that you're the only person doing it. So what are you offering that no one else is? Have you developed that niche in the market? If you are, then again, you need to let people know about it. What are you doing better than other people in your field? Are you playing Beethoven sonatas on the violin better than 99% of the people who are doing it already? If so, can you back it up and do people know about it? Are there reviews to substantiate the claim? So thinking about what you do in particular that's better than anyone else. Is there scope to combine your skills with competitors to make something better? In a business sense, they're called mergers, but it's increasingly important, I believe, for collaboration within art industries, and not to see people who are doing a similar thing as competitors, but trying to use each other to both benefit. Now, there will be some cases where it's really not the right thing to do. It's too close to home. But in most of the time, there will be some kind of reciprocal benefit that can be achieved by collaborating with other people. And can you emulate the steps taken on the route to success of other musicians that you admire or other businesses that you admire? I think it's really naive to say that every business that starts up has a master business plan, and then over the first 3, 5, 10, 15 years, as you implement that business plan, that you make all the correct decisions in those business plans to ensure that you succeed. There's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of decision making that isn't correct along the way. So can you look at examples of people who have already done it, they've already made a success, and almost kind of do a bit of an analysis on them so you can see what they've done and can you emulate it in any way? It's a good way to go. And same as businesses, how have they grown the brand? How have they expanded? What things have they done to get themselves into the public conscious much more than anyone else? If you admire them, then look them up and see if you can emulate them. And then some just housekeeping at the end. Staying organized. Having a portfolio career means that you have to do a lot more things yourself than you normally would if you were being employed by a larger organization. So you will be responsible for doing your own taxes, for example, if you're doing lots of self-employed work and filling out a self-employed tax return. If you're running a business and you're registered with Companies House, then you'll also have corporation tax and other Companies House filings to deal with as well. They're not kind of massively strenuous, but you do have to factor that in and make sure they're done, otherwise you get fined. You have to sort out your own insurance. If you're a member of the ISM, then obviously certain insurances are taken care of. But if you're doing consultancy advice, like me, for example, I need public indemnity insurance in case anyone acts on the things that I say and it's not the best in their best interests and they get in trouble for it. Obviously, I have to be protected against that. So there are other insurances as well. Really basic things like if you're using your car for work, then you need to make sure that your motor insurance is set up for business use, because that's a nice, easy way for car insurance companies to get out of paying if you have a crash. And you need to make sure that your legal help and services are in order as well. You need to know where to go if anything does arise that you need the support, the legal support or help, or if you have personal problems and you might need some counselling, then you have to know where to go for those things. And obviously, there are lots of those benefits included in your ISM membership. So that should be your first port of call. And at the end, I've written the ISM, the handbook, the ISM handbook, and all the members listings is really important, because there is someone in that huge array of nearly 7,000 members who will be perfect for what you're looking for. So it is a general kind of community which you can draw upon. So if you need to kind of look for someone in particular, a musician or a specific teacher, then use the ISM's handbook and the list of those people who are listed in there to see if you can all help each other out. Collaboration. That's what I've just said. Don't be afraid to ask for advice. The ISM offers a huge variety of business support and advice lines. So the new business support service is what I was saying about earlier, the hours worth of consultation time with me. If you haven't used that already, then feel free to drop me an email and we can book something in on Skype or on the phone. And developing a successful and busy portfolio career takes time and energy. You can't underestimate how much energy and time it takes. So just be patient and keep chipping away. I promise that with time, things will get easier. And there'll be times where things go really well and times where they're tough. And there'll be some months where you're bringing in lots of lovely income and some where you might not have anything at all. So being proactive about managing your finances, and if you are struggling financially, then seeking help from the people who offer support to musicians, such as the ISM Members Funds or Help Musicians and all of those really good organizations. So that's a really kind of quick 46 minutes run through of what I think are the important things to consider when having a portfolio career, and some of the things hopefully that you haven't considered in order to help you develop it as well. So I'll leave that screen up. So I'm going to open the kind of chat box on the left hand side. We've got about 15 minutes to kind of go through some questions. I'll try and cover as many as I can. Obviously, if I haven't managed to cover it by the end, then if you haven't used your hour with me already, then I'm more than happy to do that kind of privately, and we can go into it in much more detail than we would be able to here anyway. So I'll just sit tight and wait for you to type, and we'll try and get through as many things as we can. So hopefully the chat box is actually working and you're all just typing brilliant questions in, and you can ask any questions. Oh, here you go. So I'm not sure whether everyone can see this, so I'll read it out loud just in case you can't. So Bethany has said she's 26 and hasn't had any conservatoire training. So how important do you feel this is in attempting a career in freelance performance? Can you suggest any ways around this? It's a question I get asked a lot, actually, and I'm still undecided. I haven't had enough evidence of people kind of going into lots of professional work without the kind of conservatoire music college support system behind them. So I can't offer you any kind of statistics at the moment. But personally, I would never just book someone because they've gone to the Guildhall or the Royal College or the Royal Academy. It would be based on their ability, I feel, and making sure that they have enough information to kind of substantiate why they should book you, not just the kind of letters after your name. There will be some organizations which obviously align themselves with those institutions and will only kind of hire from the Royal Academy, and there's not very much we can do about those things, Bethany. But I think ways around it would be just making sure you have a brilliant kind of portfolio of your performance work. I'm not sure what you play or whether you're a singer, but if you can have really good quality audio, really good quality video, a really nice website to say, look, I might not have a conservatoire background, but look, this is exactly what I'm doing. I've got more information here for you to make your decision based on, then I think that's probably a good way to go. So Penelope from Cardiff, which is where I'm from, portfolio has filled up with things. Oh, it's moving. I don't really want to do. How do you back out without losing face? Okay, it'd be interesting to know kind of what type of things that you don't really want to do, whether it's kind of particular pupils that you don't want to do anymore, or whether it's other things. But I think honesty is the best policy, and telling people why you don't feel that you can do them anymore. And you can always use the excuse as a nice way to back out, in that you don't feel that you're going to be able to give it the commitment to deliver the best possible service, and therefore you don't feel that either party are benefiting from it in the end. So you're not benefiting from it, and they're not benefiting from it. So that's a good way to kind of back out without losing face. Maybe we can have a chat again, Penelope, and we can find out a little bit more to help you. Okay, so Anthony from Eastbourne. It's never too late to start. Obviously, there's oh, sorry, Anthony said he's 45 years old. I hope you don't mind me telling everyone that, Anthony. And is it too late to start? I don't think it's too late to start. Obviously, it depends on. You're probably going to be, I'm being presumptuous, but you might be better off financially than people who are 18, 19, 20, 21 years of age. So that gives you more freedom and flexibility to have a successful portfolio career. You might already have a house and a mortgage, for example. So you can be more selective. So I think it's a good time. The more stable you are, the better, especially if you're married or have a partner, because obviously there is insecurity with having a portfolio career. I don't think it's too late to start now. So this is Elise. Any advice on increasing an online presence via social media, specifically Twitter? Any consistent tweet subject section? Yes. So on social media, you do need to be fairly proactive. I think there is an optimum amount of tweets, kind of between 3 and 5 a day of actual tweets, and then you can reply to as many things as you want if anyone contacts you specifically. Statistically, if you do more than 5 tweets a day, then people start to get annoyed, apparently. So looking to build on the actual content that you're tweeting, so tweeting about relevant things that a lot of people are talking about, trying to kind of tap into the trends that are going on Twitter. So if people are searching for particular words, your tweet might come up and people might be more likely to retweet it. Consistent tweet subjects, I would say, are the things that you're trying to get people to know you for, but don't become salesy about it. Apparently, it's the #1 annoyance of Twitter followers is when people simply kind of try and promote what they do all of the time, rather than engaging and talking about interesting things and sharing things on Twitter. Twitter's brilliant because you can reach out and contact anyone you like as long as they're on it. But then once you've got their attention, don't keep banging on about you all the time. Share interesting things with them, contact them about things that are not work related. So that should be your kind of subject suggestions. The relevant things, so election things are going on at the moment. So that is obviously relevant today. So tweets about that, but obviously be careful not to kind of do what we said earlier and go really hard with your own opinion if you think it's going to affect other work. And obviously let people know what you're doing as well without being too salesy. Pablo, the more traditional sectors of classical music look at the portfolio career as someone who's jack of all trades and master of none. How do you fight that when wanting to succeed a specific part of your portfolio, but also enjoy doing the others? Yeah, you are right. To a certain extent, people do often have a perception of people who do lots of things as, well, they're having to do lots because they can't do one really well. But I think that is changing every day. More and more people are realizing that the industry that we work in, you do have to do more things, and it's completely acceptable to do those things. What I would say is make sure that each element of your portfolio career is as professionally presented as possible, with as much information and as much data as possible and as much evidence as possible. So if I'm obviously trying to sell my services as a saxophonist, which I am, then there needs to be good quality sound recordings to substantiate my claims that I am a saxophonist. If I'm doing consultancy, then there needs to be evidence of who I've worked with, the results that they've had in the past, and why other people should do it. You can't simply say that you do something. So if you're doing photography, for example, you need to have lots of good photos to show, look, I'm a serious photographer as well. And if you have all of that information, then people can't possibly say, well, you're a jack of all trade, because they can make those opinions of the quality of your work, and they're clear for everyone to see. So more and more and more content is the way to get around that. Maya, how to get the manager to promote myself, how to approach them. Well, being one myself and looking after 15 different artists, we receive stuff all the time, like hundreds of emails a week from people, maybe not a week, a month, saying, will you work with me, and will you help me? And I find it's fairly presumptuous that I don't know what I'm doing if people do contact me cold, because I go to shed loads of concerts, and I do a lot of research into what's going on within the industry that I work in. So I think cold contacting managers and things isn't always a brilliant idea, because it can kind of get their backs up slightly immediately before you've even started having any conversations. But what you can do is invite them to things, invite them to concerts, offer them a complimentary ticket for something that you're doing, and keep them in the loop about what's going on, rather than kind of that first email saying, will you manage me? Which doesn't go down well at all within the artist management industry. Okay, so let's have a look here now. Is WordPress okay for your own website? Do you feel that professionally designed one is always necessary? WordPress, people think of WordPress as being a blogging site, but it's much more powerful than that these days. Let me just check that we're still working. Okay, I'm going to carry on talking. I think we're having some problems with the camera here, but hopefully you can all still hear me. Yeah, WordPress is really, really good for building websites in as well. It has loads and loads of premium quality themes that you can use, and it also has the ability to allow comment, which is really important. Do I feel that you need a professionally designed one? It depends what you're trying to convey. If you're trying to convey something of uniqueness and something creative and brilliant, and trying to have that immediate impression of someone, then probably it is a good idea. Professionally designed doesn't necessarily mean good, by the way. So I would really look at companies who are doing them, and look at previous examples of their work to see whether that type of website is going to reflect on you properly, and whether that's something that you would like to be represented by. So Danny from Hong Kong, wow, it's a long way. I'm a composer looking to self-publish. Is there any advice you could give? Yeah, so self-publishing, it seems to be a good way to go at the moment, because there's you make more money from self-publishing. Obviously, no one else is taking your royalties away from you, and also the control over the quality of what you're printing is in your hands as well. I would definitely try and find a way of distributing your music if you're self-publishing, because the promotion and distribution is what publishing companies should be doing for you. So obviously, if you're self-publishing yourself, then you need to look at the distribution to make sure that it's getting into the types of places where it will sell. That's the major thing. And the other thing is, if you're doing a lot of orchestral writing, you're going to have a lot of scores in your house. So you need to make sure that you've got space and a library system, so if people do want to hire music from you, as well as buy music from you, that you can get it out to them quickly and you know where it all is. So we've talked about the WordPress thing. Okay. So Lydia, What's the best way to promote yourself, e.g., website, bio, homepage, without sounding big-headed, including all your skills? Talk factually and talk objectively about everything. So don't kind of put any personal opinion into it. I suppose just talk in facts. Let other people do the praise for you. So using reviews where you can, and trying to get all of those things on the website rather than you having to say, talk about yourself. Get other people to do it for you is a good way of doing it. The best way of promoting yourself, which one? Well, having a website will be the first port of call for most people. They'll Google you and they'll come to your website directly. SoundCloud is a good one if you want to try and get more of your music out there, and also you can integrate that really well now. Having video content is a really good way of doing it, and that is a way of negating the big head thing as well, because you can show everyone what you do. I'm just going to cover the last two that have just come in because I'm conscious that it's 2 o'clock, so I'm just going to look at those quickly, and then like I said, if there are any others that I haven't covered, then obviously feel free to contact me via email, and we'll do it via the ISM professional consultancy service. So the next question: I'm not confident with web presence, and it often looks to me this is the second most important skill after playing good. Yes. What would be the minimum I should do in your opinion? Facebook, SoundCloud, website, what would be the most used? Again, most people, when they search for your name, they would expect to see a website. If they don't see a website, people think that you're trying to hide something. It's also the only way that you can control the way that everything looks about you. If you do something through Facebook, via Twitter, then there's a lot of other things around it, which it doesn't give you any clarity. So having your own website would mean that you can control the way everything looks, the way everything is presented. Yeah, we're not expected to be web designers. There's people who are doing that job in the same way we wouldn't be expected to build our own house without the skills. So ask for help. If people do want any advice on websites, I've worked with lots of companies in the past, and I can talk to you about the pros and the cons via email maybe. So the last one from Simon: do music degrees from lesser universities affect your chances of employed work? Graduated with distinction from masters in composition, but earning less than £5,000 a year. If I graduated from Guildhall, Trinity, or College, would I actually be more employable than I currently am? I'm not sure. I think it all depends on what you've done since, to some degree. Obviously, if you go to one of the considered, the big 3 or the big 4 colleges in London, then you have that platform and pedigree. It's the name, which does, in certain industries have some clout, but we can't do anything about that if you haven't got it. So we have to look at other ways in order to kind of promote yourself. So things like making sure all of that content is readily available to people, and making sure it's clearly laid out so people can hear you, they can see you, they can do make all of those decisions easily. I can't possibly comment on whether you'd be earning more than what you're earning at the moment if you've gone to Guildhall, because I think it's completely personal, and it's how ambitious you are and what you're doing, and kind of how you're trying to promote yourself. Lesser universities, well, I think lots of people go to universities for very specific reasons. They might be more academic than they are performance-based. So, and what are considered lesser universities is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? So, I would kind of try not to dwell on that. There's not a lot you can do about it. If you haven't gone to one of them, then we can't do anything about that unless you wanted to go do a postgrad somewhere. So I don't think that you should dwell on that at all, to be honest. Okay, so it's 2:05 now, so we've run out of time, I'm afraid. So I hope you found it useful. I'm really sorry that the camera kind of cut out. Maybe you can still see me, who knows? But it's not showing on it's not showing it on my screen at all. So what I'll do is, if you do have any other questions that I haven't answered, get in touch with me. My email address is info@jwahlgarthwaite.com, or if you can't remember that, then if you contact anyone at the ISM team, then I'm sure we'll be able to pass that on to you. All right, so hope you have a great afternoon, and thanks for logging in and sitting with me.